intermission time. It's great to get out to the movies.
Hi, I'm Megan Braun. Nice to meet you too. So, I am the host of a synagogue podcast called Intermission, and I have here director of the film Slanted, Amy Wang, along with the lead of the film, Shirley Chen. Thank you both for chatting with me. Briefly, can you tell me and tell the listener what the film is about? A brief synopsis.
Sure, yeah. The film is about a very insecure Chinese American teenager played by Shirley, and McKenna. In pursuit of winning prom queen in high school, she basically undergoes interracial surgery to become a white girl. The second half I won't ruin, but the journey doesn't go as well as she hopes.
Such a crazy plot, by the way. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And like you said, also starring McKenna Grace. Well, for you to understand our podcast, our shows about getting to know our guests through the films that they watch, I like for our listeners to be a bit introspective about who they are in the world of film. And so why they make the films that they make, or maybe why they choose the projects that they choose and what that says about them. And a question that I ask everyone that comes on the show is if either of you had to pick a movie that describes your life right now, whichever way you want to take this question, do you have a movie that comes to mind?
My life right now.
You can take it as literally or as vague as you want it.
This is so, this might be very exposing of me, but I mean, one of my favorite movies is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, of course. And I think last night I was just staying up and journaling after about like, I just love love, and it's very deep to who I am. And I really believe like love is a practice of understanding someone deeply. I think acting is one and the same. And so I think to me that movie always teaches me like we choose life always, even if things cause us pain. And I think it's really important to me. So I would pick Eternal Sunshine.
So
That's a favorite
nice.
movie of mine.
Yeah, of course. It's so great.
Mine is it's kind of the opposite.
Oh my
Not that I
God.
hate love. I love love. But I don't really have one. I mean, like all of my favorite films, I feel like follow a similar trajectory. I like tragedies a lot, and I like
Hmm.
movies where the main character sinks into like a specific sin, whether or not it's rage or greed or
Huh.
lust, and basically cannot overcome it. So some of those movies are Raging Bull is one of my favorites. A Simple Plan, which I have a poster of back there. The Sam Raimi movie is all about greed. I love Michael Haneke is one of my favorite filmmakers, and The Piano Teacher is a film that I absolutely love. And you know, I know this is cheating, but the next movie that I want to make, my second feature, that kind of is where I'm at in my life, where that movie is kind of a blend of like Amadeus, Whiplash. It's about
Hmm.
competitive piano playing. And it's really talking about envy, it's talking about classism. It's kind of reflective of how I'm feeling and how I feel in this industry often, where I don't come from famous parents or a rich,
Hmm.
a wealthy family. My parents are still back in Australia and have nothing to do with film. And all around me, I'm constantly, competing for jobs with against, people who are daughters or sons of famous screenwriters or actors. I'm sure Shirley feels the same, and no shade to them, but I think it's just such an interesting dynamic and not feeling like I belong, but also feeling that envy of like, man, I wish I had unlimited money where I didn't have to, take jobs for the sake of just being able to pay the rent, um, in this competitive, weird kind of environment. So yeah, my
That's
next movie.
fascinating. That is so fascinating. Now that you've said that, I'm curious in regards to like the deadly sins that you kind of mentioned. If you
Yeah.
had to pick one that would be the deadly sin associated with this film, what would it be?
Mm. I mean, probably envy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because she wants Olivia's life. You know, she wants popularity, she wants beauty, she wants acceptance. She doesn't have it. What do you think, Shirley?
Is greed is one of them, right? Because I was going to say greed,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think that greed and envy go really hand in hand.
yeah.
Because I also
Totally.
think greed is like the opposite of gratitude, right? And I just think it's so hard
Mm,
for Joan to feel grateful for what she has, because yeah, because she's envious. All she wants is what someone else has. So I think those go hand in hand.
mm.
Very cool. What is a movie that made you feel seen for the first time? Because I think this movie has a lot to do with feeling seen and being seen for who you are or who you may want to be. But in your own
Mhm.
life, what comes to mind?
I mean, I keep saying this one, but I saw Minari when I was like
Mm,
at Sundance in 2020, and it was, my first Sundance, my first feature, my first lead, like also my first romantic lead. It was all of my firsts, and I just went to see it. Like no one had promoted it to me. It was just in the pamphlet. I was like, oh, little Asian boy, like, what's this about? Let me go watch it. And I remembered like within the first couple minutes, just watching the scene where they're like the family's driving in the car and they're moving, and it suddenly reminded me of this memory that I never lived, which is that of my parents and my brother moving to America, because I was born here but they weren't. And like it was like I just immediately bawling, because I was like, oh shoot, that must have been what it felt like to feel you know completely bewildered by this like new world and fascinated by it, and also scared and alone, but all you have is each other. And it felt serendipitous to get to be almost in the right space in the right time, acting and being so moved by this story, as soon as the cast and Leah Chango came out at the end. So that's my answer.
Um, for representation, I would say Charlie's Angels, uh, the first one, and obviously the second one too, because of Lucy Liu. But in terms of feeling seen as a film, like just like I don't know, my personality or my beliefs. I remember when I was, I think like 14 or 15, I watched Fight Club for the first time.
mm,
Mm.
And Fight Club, it just it really is just who I am. It's so just like
That's so fun.
ethically, morality wise, but also it's so entertaining. It's so dark, but it's funny. It's just iconic. And so yeah, I felt the most seen, I don't know, through
yeah.
Fight Club.
No, that's sweet. And that also makes sense hearing you say that, knowing the genre of slanted and that blend of
Mm.
like intense but humor and how there's two sides to that same coin. And also, Shirley, I love Minari. That is such a good movie. Okay, so for Slanted specifically, were there films? I typically like to ask people when they come on the show, like film inspiration, whether that's tonal or acting inspiration. What films come to mind?
Yes, there were a lot. I watch a lot of satire, so I watched Being There for the first time, which was so funny, so incredible. Sick of Myself, which is by Christopher, I can't remember his name. I'm such a huge fan of his. Uh, I watched Sorry to Bother You Again. I'd seen it before. I loved it, and that's always a great piece because it's about race as well. And then in terms of the visual storytelling, I really wanted it to, even though the film's a satire, I really wanted it to feel very grounded. And that was something that hadn't really been done before, because you look at something like Sorry to Bother You, everything is so heightened, right?
Hmm.
The cinematography, the production design, the colors, the acting. And then you also look at like Ruben Östlund, he does a lot of satire, right? All of his films, Triangle of Sadness, The Square, and he really leaves a lot of room in the frame, and he doesn't like to cut, he just lets the comedy kind of play out. And I didn't want to do either of those styles. And I'd never really seen one where it was shot like um, Andrea Arnold's Fish Tank,
Hmm.
but it was a satire, and that's what I tried to blend.
You just
So
referenced so many good
yeah,
movies.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I worked really hard with my DP, and I remember we took apart Fish Tank, we took apart the Darden brothers, you know, but fuck, what's the kid with a bike, right? That's the movie's name. I can't remember.
Oh, I don't
But
know.
like, yeah, but a bunch of, you know, just very almost documentary-like kind of cinematography, which I love the most, because it feels so effortless, but I know it's so precise. And paired that, yeah, with this kind of over-the-top world, which was kind of interesting, yeah, and difficult.
Very cool. Sorry to bother you that reference because that movie just has such a hard pivot too. Where I remember when I watched it for the first time, I did not realize how crazy it was gonna get. Um, and then The Square's another one that I love, which tonally feels different, but I'm understanding like the connection between the two. Really,
Yeah.
really good movies. And obviously Fish Tank
Yes.
incredible.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the satire that Ruben Östlund does is so good.
Hmm.
And you just have to push it, right?
Shirley, did you have any movies you watched to prep for this film?
Yeah, I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, Amy, you sent me a list, so I watched
I
Sick of
did.
Myself, Dream Scenario, and Being John Malkovich, I think were the ones that you sent me for this,
Ooh,
right? Yeah. And I think with all of those, you really want to believe that there's no way out except for the solution being presented, right? Like there's the I, in each of those, like the performances are so grounded and intense in this very quiet way. Um, and yeah, you just really have to believe, like, in order to believe the insanity that comes, surrounding the circumstance, you just have to believe in the earnestness of this person's deep desire, right? And I think it's true for all three of those movies. And I remembered when this project was first sent to me, like I'm pretty sure the deck you said it was like Sorry to Bother You meets Black Swan was like what we were talking about at the time. And I love
cool.
both of those movies, of course. And I think Black Swan is a great example of like that intensity from the female gaze as well.
I like to typically end my episodes with like a recommendation. So obviously we're recommending the listener to go see Slanted, but in addition to Slanted, if you could think of one film that you would love the listener to go see, it's a must watch in your opinion, whether it's old, current, in theaters,
Mm.
what comes to mind?
The first thing that pops into my head, I don't know why, it's an old Japanese film called Cure. Um, it's not that old. It's like from 2000, like early 2000s. But it's so good. And I almost don't want to, ruin what it's about. But it's like a psychological kind of thriller movie. It's called Cure. And it's unbelievable. I don't know why I thought of that film, but I just did.
Well, that's the fun of
Yeah.
questions like this because it's just whatever comes to your head first. I think that's the best
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I don't have one. I think my two Japanese movies that came up, Grave of the Fireflies, because it reminds me so
Mm.
much of my relationship with my older brother.
Hmm.
House, just because it's so to think that they like did like frame by frame that like it's just like the artistry of it is crazy, and also like children in that is crazy as an idea. We don't talk like why are all those kids shirtless? Like no one talks about that when we talk about House. Like well, they're so young, but whatever. And then Best in Show, rest in peace, Catherine O'Hara, and
Mm.
lastly Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like I guess those two are like the comedy. I miss those crazy comedies. We don't have those crazy comedies anymore.
I agree.
Right on. Well, thank you guys. I am out of time here, but I'm really excited to watch this movie. I think it's a really interesting concept. I love all the movies you just referenced, like bangers across the board. And
Yes.
thank you for chatting with me.
Good evening.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. To stay in touch, follow our Instagram page at It's Intermission Time and share with your friends. As always, Intermission is produced by Jazeel Chu and Olivia Dean, and of course, hosted by yours truly, Megan Braun. This episode is brought to you by The Synagogue.